Howdy, Desert Boy here. This is the follow-up to the shorts that I had talking about summer carry, and we'll start off with a video on pocket carry. And originally in that one showed a couple guns. I said I might add one or two others, and I have. And the thing about pocket carry is it's a way that makes it unobtrusive in a lot of ways, because there's not something on your belt or something in the front of you. You know, if you're an appendix carry type person, or a shoulder holster. Sometimes those things get to be shoulder holsters, especially sometimes with t-shirts, so those are kind of hard to conceal sometimes, unless you have a vest over it or something, or it's underneath another shirt, which you can do. But we're talking about pocket carry, and so our focus will be on the following guns that you see right here. Now, we'll be talking about pocket carry, and here are the four we'll be discussing today. We'll be looking at them closer. Starting on the left is a Smith and Wesson 351 PD and 22 Magnum, 7 rounds. The next is a Smith and Wesson 637 and 38 Special Plus P, 5 rounds. The Sig Sauer P938 9mm, which has 7 rounds, is semi-auto, single action only, the safety, and also the last one is the Walther PPKS and 380 ACP, which is a double action, single action, and it has a safety also. And so it gives you, a couple of revolver options that I like to use. I'm just sharing with you, and a couple of semi-auto options depending on the needs, and I'll talk about that in more detail. As you can see, some have wood grips, some have more like composite or G10 grips. So we'll talk about these, and we will also be focusing on the following holsters, which you will see right here. These are the holsters we'll talk about today. On the left is the DeSantis Nemesis for J-frames, which will be for the 351 PD and the 637 Smith and Wessons. In the center is the DeSantis for the Sig Sauer P938, and on the right side is the PPKS from Missoula. So having seen those, let's talk about, pocket carry. It took me a while to decide to maybe do pocket carry. And it's not for everybody, you have to decide that's something you want to do. You got to be comfortable with it. For me, I believe in having a holster. Some people may have other thoughts on that, but I'm just sharing what works for me. As you know, I'm a hobbyist and enthusiast, and you always got to follow your local, state, and federal firearms laws, permitting, training, whatever, to be in compliance. You always want to be compliant. But for me, where I'm at and what I'm allowed to do, where I live at, I find pocket carry to be a very handy way to carry, and we'll start off with this DeSantis J-frame holster. And the nice thing about J-frame holsters, or the holster that you buy for guns that there's multiple versions of them, is generally the holster will fit just about any J-frame. And, you got to check to make sure, but usually, like for me, I've found for my J-frames, they fit fine. And so let's look at my J-frames that I'm using for that. I have this 351 PD, which we can see is empty. It's unloaded. Okay, it's a 7-rounder. It's got nice fiber optic sights. It is a double action, single action. Some people prefer double action onlys in pocket carry. And for me, usually for my fingers, I like the grip to be extended, like I'll show you on the 637, but because this is a lighter recoiling gun and so forth, this works fine for me. And it's got the traditional, fixed sights, but see with that fiber optic on there, that really helps. And this is called an AirLite PD, actually. It's a 351 PD. And they do make a version that has, it is a internal hammer with just double action only. So this is one that I use. And how do I use it? So I'll talk about how I use each one of these. This one here is the most likely one that I would use perhaps as a backup gun if people are allowed to have those, or as one that maybe I might have, you know, in my vehicle or something like that, just to have it along. Or a lot of times you're just running down to the hardware store, you're running to the grocery store or something, and you just, you know, maybe you just want to put something in your pocket and go down there and know that you have protection. You're in a low risk environment, a generally low risk environment. And so the real-time nature of making videos when you're at your house is sometimes you can get interrupted by people at the door, which is exactly what happened there. So let's get back to talking about the 351 PD, right, which as I've shown you, is unloaded, right, with 7 rounds of 22 Magnum. Once again, this is something very handy for running down to the store. You can put it in your pocket. As I said, it's depending on your neighborhood. For me, it's a low risk environment where I live at, and where I was, going to most of my retail areas where I live in the neighborhood of the part of town that I'm in. And generally, it's usually going to be daytime hours, when people are out and about and so forth. Then I would use something like this to run down there. And that's just for very basic self-defense. The 22 Magnum is a capable round. Being as it's rimfire, some people might not be as comfortable with the reliability as a centerfire cartridge. And that's why we'll talk about the next J-frame, my Smith and Wesson 637. So, and by the way, this gun weighs about 11 ounces, about 11.3, so it's very light, okay? So once again, this is a Nemesis by DeSantis pocket holster that's for J-frames. Here is my Smith and Wesson 637. And this happens to have one that's an enhanced action, and it came with this extended grip, which for my hands works really well. Even though it's wood, some people don't prefer the wood because they don't feel like they get as good of a grip on it, but this one works very well for me. And this is a 38 Smith and Wesson 38 Special plus B, and nice gun. It is, as I've showed, it's unloaded. It is a 5-round gun, right? So why would I use this? And it fits nicely right there into the holster right there. And of course, they make them also as double action only without the external hammer and the internal hammer. This is a double action, single action. Why would I prefer this one maybe over this one? Well, first of all, centerfire cartridge, most people would say, gives you increased reliability. The 38 Special is can be a significantly larger round. Your 22 Magnums are going to be in the 30 to 45 grain range. They do have some good velocity in some of the rounds that are made for self-defense and things. But this here is going to, be from 110 grain self-defense ammo to 158 grain lead ammo, so it's significantly larger. Muzzle velocity could be lower, but you also have the option of shooting plus P, not just 38 Special, but plus B, which has additional power to the round. So yes, only 5 rounds. Once again, you're going somewhere that's generally lower risk environment. You're not expecting to be in an environment, perhaps, where you're going to be confronted by, multiple adversaries or something like that. As far as reloading goes, for either of these, because they are revolvers, you're going to use something that's more like a speed strip, By the way, this is the speed strips for this guy, right? And these are 10 round speed strips. I actually have two of them together there just to show you. Okay. With the other one, you're much likely to have a speed loader, or in this case, this is a J-clip by Zeta 6, which I like sometimes more than the HKS ones, but they also are very good. You load all 5 of them at once. Or you have something like this sim strip from Zeta 6, which you can load like 2 at a time, 1 at a time, and do tactical reload, as they call it. So just something to think about, you know. So you can, you always carry some reload with me, probably 2, with the being as the capacity is less. But you're not generally worried about having a confrontation or a situation where you might think that you need an extensive amount of additional rounds. So just something to think about. When you think about why you're doing things, what you're going to use it for, is it enough power? And as we get into the summer carry series, I'll actually add, originally I only talked about having pocket carry and concealed carry, but I'm also going to talk about what do you do when it's summer and you're kind of more out in the woods, and I'll talk a little bit about what I have for that, because that starts becoming a different situation if you live in more rural areas where there's larger predators or something. So that's a different topic. But anyway, so that's the Revolver. Nice thing about the Revolver. What's the great thing about the Revolver? Well, pretty simple to operate, right? You go over here, you push this forward, you open it up. You can see easily if it's loaded or unloaded. You eject the rounds, you put more rounds in, you close it back up, and when you're ready to fire, if you pull the trigger, it's going to fire. So pretty simple. You don't usually have to worry about jams or malfunctions and things like you do with semi-autos. However, semi-autos have other great pluses, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. There's a boy here. One of the things I didn't mention as a pro for the Revolver, many people would say as a pro for the Revolver, and some of my YouTube colleagues would say I'm remiss in perhaps not mentioning it. And we'll use the 637 here, which we'll check unloaded again, right, even though we already have. Is that because the revolver can be pushed up against the threat or the adversary, when you're in immediate fear of your life, you're afraid you're going to lose your life, you need extreme situation where you're trying to survive, and you could go ahead and pull the trigger, and the revolver is more likely to be able to fire. Somebody would have to be able to, maybe stop the cylinder from rotating or the hammer going back, or if you have a double action only, then that problem's solved because there's no hammer to go back, it's internal. So that's something that, you'd pull the trigger and the gun would fire, and, it'd be an extreme situation where it's up against the threat or the adversary. And so another one is, and I think Paul Harrell's done some videos on some of this kind of stuff, is that, and I don't advocate it, it's not something that I would advocate, but a revolver can be, I think in the videos they've done, could be potentially fired from, inside a jacket pocket, let's say. And, and there's always hazards with doing anything like that. But you might want to watch some of those videos by him or other folks and to understand that better. But, and of course, if you didn't have the hammer on here, double action only, it makes it even better. There's nothing else to snag or get on anything. How semi-autos are different is semi-autos, they have a slide, and if the slide gets knocked what they call out of battery, which is out of position, where maybe the slide's back a little bit, at times the gun may not fire, but worse yet, the gun would not be locked. The locking mechanism would not be in place, and if it did fire, it could be extremely hazardous to the person firing it, not just the person that it's pushed up against and and inside of a pocket, that's it's likely that it would get knocked out a battery in there, But now I would watch some of those videos, and it's just that's something that a lot of people would say is a pro for the revolver versus the semi-automatic. So just something to think about. As Desert Boy always says, we want to be safe out there, whatever we're doing. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye now.